This is Sean Christ. I'm doing an interview for a school project. So, could you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name's Chris Crosswhite. I'm the Executive Director of the Rescue Mission of Salt Lake.
What exactly does the rescue mission do?
Yeah, that's a good question. In a simplistic form, the Rescue Mission provides emergency services to the homeless population, men, women, and women with children, in the Salt Lake City area. We have some outreach elements to other cities throughout Utah. We provide those emergency services of meals, breakfast, lunch, and dinner every day of the week, shelter every night, personal hygiene, clothing, emergency crisis counseling. We provide these a day room. We provide these services really to help provide dignity and respect and the basics of life for our homeless friends, and also just to keep people alive in a lot of sense, and also to be building personal relationships with them, so when they have a desire to change their life, that they would enter our New Life Recovery Program. And that is a substance abuse program, primarily substance abuse program, but also helps people with other life-defining issues, whether it would be gambling, alcoholism, drug addiction. And on that 13-month comprehensive inpatient program, we address the cause of their homelessness. We have educational components that help them obtain recovery and then relapse prevention, life skills, and then we move them to employment. We help them obtain employment. They save money, and once they've saved a suitable amount of money and have worked through all the curriculums of the rescue mission, they graduate into a self-sustained apartment. So they move out into their own living accommodations and are now self-sufficient. So emergency services to the homeless, inpatient recovery services, comprehensive inpatient recovery services to those trying to change their lives so they can leave the streets. We also do family food boxes to the working poor to prevent homelessness in people's lives. Our hope is if there's a family or a person living in poverty, they would come to us. We could augment their food needs so they can transfer some of that money to perhaps paying rent or utilities, a car repair, so they don't become homeless. We do a couple of other educational seminars. We directly serve local churches in the local community who want to release people into ministry and release people kind of into humanitarian services by them coming here, volunteering, the mission mentoring them, and providing, as in a large way, a Christian, a Christian organization to be providing services both back to the Christian population, so they're with them serving and then directly going into helping other people. So that's what we do honestly in a nutshell.
All right. So how many people do you feed?
Yeah, we feed about 600 people a day, 600 meals a day. Sometimes, all depending on the individual, we don't count the exact number of individuals coming in the door. We count the number of meals we serve throughout the day. So one person may eat one meal a day here, another person may eat two or three, but every day we're providing about 600 meals per day. Every night in both our men's facility and our women's facility, we have about 165 to 170 people per night in both facilities. And those are obviously individual people and per night with us. And then we also have a transitional housing unit for men who graduate the program. And there's normally 4 to 5 men living in that transitional house.
Okay.
So anywhere from 165 to 175 people per night.
So do you know why most people become homeless?
Well, there is no one reason why a person becomes homeless.
Right.
It and it's usually multiple different reasons why any one person becomes homeless. So it's a little simplex to think that it's one reason.
Right.
A lot of it is poverty oriented, and so if a person is struggling with a poverty level lifestyle, then a couple of things can go wrong in their life, and they end up homeless. So, in the mid 2000s, 2007, when we had the economic recession, then we actually had people who were kind of living at a poverty level. They would lose their jobs. 2-3 months later, they lose their apartment, and they found themselves at the rescue mission, having never been here before. Others are struggling with an addiction, whether that would be gambling, alcohol, drugs, shopping. And that addiction has led their life to be out of control. They're spending money on things instead of rent and utilities. If the addiction is mood altering, whether that is gambling or alcohol or drugs, then often there are other results except for financial loss in the person's life because of their addiction. So they may lose their employment because of missing work because they have a hangover, or showing up to work drunk, or not being able to perform at work because of a substance abuse problem. So they may then lose their employment and lose their home and come to the streets. So maybe just poverty and natural consequences like your car breaks down or you get laid off. It could be an addiction reason is another cause of homelessness. A third cause of homelessness is education and an individual's life skills. So some people have dropped out of school way too early. They find it very, very difficult, and this is directly related back to poverty. Then they've dropped out of school way too early. They struggle with maintaining employment. They may have a challenge in their life that they're not receiving as much help as they really need, whether that would be some sort of a learning disability or that would be hindering them in some ways. Definitely not everybody with a learning disability becomes homeless, but some people who have a severe learning disability may face greater challenges in life, and if they don't have the support that they need, it would affect them, may affect them having a job and becoming homeless. So the economy, poverty, substance abuse, some sort of an addiction, limited education or life skills could directly affect homelessness. Mental illness is another major factor that affects homelessness. Is very frequently a person with mental illness will be dual diagnosed, so they may have a mental illness if they don't know how to manage it well with medication, or if they refuse to take medication, then they may turn around and try to manage their mental illness with alcohol or drugs, and now they're multi-diagnosed, where they have a mental illness, and then some of the mentally ill also would now be dual diagnosis, where they have a mental illness and an addiction problem. So that's another cause of homelessness. A fourth cause of homelessness would be traumatic stress, some type of an event in their life, whether that they just can't come to grips with and move past it, and that could be any different thing from the death of a loved one to a man or a woman who has terminated a pregnancy, and they just experience a tremendous amount of guilt and shame. It may be a car accident. It may be serving in the military. So some sort of traumatic event that is becoming a controlling factor in their life, and then affecting the other areas of their life. Often with people having experienced those traumatic events, what they want to do is they can't change the event, is they just don't want to feel it anymore. So what we're seeing significantly, both from the Vietnam War and then most recently from the 2 wars we have going on in the Middle East is people are coming back to substance abuse. So they're drinking too much, they're taking drugs, they just want to forget what they've experienced, and then that's causing an addiction and lack of employment. So they're if you talk to people who say we can do one thing and we're just going to identify one thing that would solve the issue of homelessness in the United States, it's an uneducated opinion. Another factor for homelessness is a medical condition. So mental health really is a medical condition that's affecting the brain, and there may just be a physical ailment. So a couple of my friends are homeless because they didn't have insurance. They needed a medical treatment like a knee replacement, or they hurt their back, so they can't function in their primary area of occupation anymore. And if they're unable to take care of that medical need, then they become homeless. Several of the homeless develop a medical condition then prevents them from going back to work. So medical conditions is another cause of homelessness. It's never simple.
Right.
Yeah, it's never simple. Wish it was.
Yeah.
If it was easy, we would have solved it already.
Yeah. Has the mission ever requested aid from the government?
Yeah, so the mission is 100% privately funded, and we have been ever since our founding. So to my knowledge, in the last 10 years that I've been here, the mission's has never requested nor accepted direct government funding. And we do that to maintain our religious distinctives. So the Rescue Mission is a Christian organization. We serve everybody regardless of their faith perspectives, but our inpatient recovery services directly incorporates elements of biblical Christianity on our recovery program. And if we accept government funding, then they turn around and tell us that we're not allowed to have religious distinctives. And we don't want to give those up, so we happily don't accept government funds.
And how is that? Is that more difficult receiving just private funding?
Yes and no. So some government funds can be phenomenally competitive to apply for those. And one of the things with many agencies, if they become dependent upon some very specific government funding, if they're not awarded that funding again the next year because perhaps another agency is competing for a grant and has had differing statistics, or a new program that for whatever reason the government funds one agency's grant instead of another, then the agency doesn't have enough funding to exist, or to provide those services, so they're closing services simply because they don't have a governmental source. Frequently, the government, in obtaining government funding, it can be a larger single source of income or a gift of income. So a couple of friends of mine in agencies will apply for government funding, and they may be gifted $1 million to run a program through their facility directly from the government, where for us as the Rescue Mission, we don't have a benefactor saying here's $1 million a year to run their programs. So yes, it's harder for us to go raise many gifts to equal $1 million, where they're raising one gift to one grant for $1 million. It's more difficult for us to do that. But then if one donor to the mission decides that they're going to change, we don't have to close. We don't have to end a service because 1 or 2 donors decided not to support us anymore. We just simply have to go replace those 1 or 2 donors with other people who want to invest in the mission. So there's definite positives to being privately funded from denominational amounts that are lower than the government, but there's benefits and there's challenges both. So
Okay.
yeah, the mission has a fundamental concern and philosophy of being debt averse, and that we have a great concern that many of the social services that are being funded from the federal government, often through HUD, Housing and Urban Development, is many of those programs are being funded by deficit spending at the federal level. And then it's really by a state level, is the state going into debt or not? And the overall debt load of the federal government will hit a tipping point where they can't pay for all of the services that they're doing, and they're going to have to start cutting services. So nonprofit organizations who are now dependent upon government funding are going to eventually find themselves in an extremely difficult situation because the government's going to be cutting their income sources.
Right.
Yeah. So it's basic economics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In your professional opinion, is it possible to end homelessness?
I don't think so. First of all, biblically, God tells us that we will always have the poor. He says that we should never have the poor. First thing he tells us is that we should never have the poor among us. And if everybody's doing what they're supposed to be doing, he tells us we won't have the poor. But then later in that same verse, he says, but you will always have the poor with you, which tells us we're never going to be perfect. We're never going to be able to solve every one of society's problems. So people are not becoming homeless. So I think there will always be the homeless among us. And as men, women, and children leave homelessness, I think the next day other people are going to be entering homelessness.
Right.
No, we're not going to solve it 100%.
Is there any way we could get it to such a small amount that it would make little to no difference on society?
Well, we haven't been able to do that yet.
Right.
So I think what we need to do is minimize the impact it's making. So when we're talking about all of those causes of homelessness that we talked about previously, to minimize the number of people who are entering into homelessness means we need to solve the educational crisis in America and the literacy crisis in America. We need to solve the addiction problems in America. We have to solve mental illness problems in America. We have to solve the issues of poverty and chronic poverty in America, which is right in line with still more education, more life skills, more employment opportunities at all levels of the ability spectrum. And then we need to be paying people enough money that as they're working 40 hours plus a week, they're not living at poverty level. So one element like their car breaking down, which all of our cars are going to eventually break down, doesn't trigger such a loss in their life that they can't fix their car and then fall into homelessness because they had a car breakdown. So I don't think as a society as much effort, both from the federal level, state, county, city, all of the initiatives from very benevolent corporations and individuals, is we still, in the United States, having more resources than any other country on earth, we still haven't been able to solve every one of those areas that are continuing today to result in people becoming homeless. And if we did, we would be really a utopia. So I don't think I don't think we're ever going to solve the problem. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't do everything we can in our power to solve the problem and to reduce the number of people who are experiencing homelessness in our society. The goal would be to be providing homeless services and comprehensive services across the spectrum and homeless prevention curriculum that as a percentage of the population, homelessness is going down as a percentage of the population instead of staying the same or going up. Right. Which means we have to improve our services, expand our services at a greater level of population growth. And if we do that, we're going to stay the same or become or gain ground. If we don't expand homeless services at the rate or greater than the rate of the population growth, then we're going to experience an increased number of homeless. So it's really statistics and providing services. So Next question. Unless there's some clarification in there.
No, it actually makes a lot of sense. So where does it start to fix these crises?
Yeah. It starts in the individual. It starts in you.
Right.
So for homelessness in my own life, what am I doing as an individual to take care of myself and to make wise decisions for myself and for my family that that provides for myself? Okay, so the fundamental purpose really of the United States is that we're a self-governed people. Okay, I first and foremost govern myself. So I think, Sean, I think for your school project and people all the way throughout the education perspective, when they're in elementary school, junior high, high school, is to realize that education is phenomenally important. Not only what is the teacher teaching in class, but how do the principles of what the teachers are teaching in class and everything else they're doing in the school, how does that apply to making us more and more a self-governed, responsible person? And society, the United States government, all of our local governments, they're not designed to be governing each and every individual. They're supposed to be giving us boundaries and consequences of when we don't govern ourselves well. And so I think it starts with the individual. I think it starts with kids at school saying, hey, there's a reason why I'm supposed to be to class on time, and that's because the teacher's going to start teaching. And if once the teacher starts teaching, if I'm not there, I'm not learning something. And then if the teacher waits for me or starts over, then I've taken that 5 minutes out of my life, but I've also taken that 5 minutes out of every other student's life in the classroom. And the life skill is I know multiple people and have experienced this myself in being an employer, of having to let people go, and thus them people at the rescue mission, and also at times some employees of the mission who regularly don't show up for work on time or simply don't show up for work. And that's a life skill and mentality that some people believe it's okay if I'm regularly late for work. No, it's not okay. You'll probably be laid off for chronic lateness. It's okay if I just don't show up to school. No, that's not okay. If I just don't show up for work, it's likely that you'll get laid off. And so those are some self-governing facilities. The other things that we can do is realize that some of our laws are incredibly important, and there's a reason why we have it. So underage drinking. So drinking before you're 21 years old is alcohol affects the brain in a very significant way. And one of the ways it does it is it reduces the oxygen level in your brain, and that's one of the things that makes you feel drunk. And up until you're 21 years old, your brain is developing and growing at such a phenomenal rate and learning so much that if a person is doing drugs or drinking before they're 21 years old, what they're literally doing is causing themselves irreversible brain damage. That the older they are, the longer they do drugs, the longer they're involved with getting drunk, whether it's just binging every once in a while on a weekend, is actually damaging their brain and preventing it from developing as well as it should have. And when you're around 21 years old, then your brain is excessively developed, and you're going to be doing, and you have now the more mental and emotional reasons for self-control, then you would realize, hey, I need to not get drunk. So when you're 21, approximately 21, you have those greater judgmental abilities for self-control, and you can say, hey, I've had a couple of beers, I shouldn't have any more because in an hour I need to drive home. And when you're younger than that, you may not have that ability to make that decision yet. So obeying the law, not drinking underage, it can be a significant influencer on whether or not alcohol becomes a problem in your life, and then because of alcohol you become addicted. The vast majority of the clients, the extreme majority of the clients inside the rescue mission began drinking before the age of 21. Multiple began drinking when they were in their early teens, and it became a dominant element in their life before they were 18 years old, graduating from high school. So underage drinking, underage drug use, if not engaging in that, is a huge element in ending homelessness.
Which goes back to education and teaching kids about what this does to you.
Exactly, exactly. It also goes to peer pressure and social pressure. Okay, if guys in the school are saying, "Hey, you're cool if you'll drink a beer at a party on a Friday night," if a person feels like they have to drink that beer to be somebody else's friend, that there's a condition on that friendship like that, then it's really not a true friendship. If and this even goes to, at our women's facility, we have multiple women who have struggled with poverty because they've had unplanned pregnancies. Well, it's a complete lie. No woman should be responding to any age, any male saying, "I know you love me if you do something. If you sleep with me. Oh, I know you love me if you sleep with me." Or, "You're cool if you're dating this guy because he's a really good athlete, or he's on the football team or the basketball team, and you want to be one of the cool girls or the in girls, so you're sleeping with the guy." That's not true love. That's not true relationship. That's really manipulation, and it's really saying, instead of being a valuable person in and of yourself, instead of being deserve to be loved and respected in and of yourself, just because you are who you are, that you have to perform to obtain somebody else's acceptance of you, that's a problem, no matter what you're doing. And social pressure is phenomenally powerful. So and I've had friends in school, friends on the inpatient recovery program. His name's Jason. He became an addict because of social pressure, and so Jason was he was an athlete. He was trying out for a baseball team, and he didn't make the cut. He was very, very competitive, and he was a latchkey kid, so his parents weren't home. When he came home from school, his parents were still at work, and he got cut from the team, and he wasn't one of the cool kids. So Jason had one really good friend in his neighborhood, and when he was cut from the team, didn't make the team, he went home, and his neighbor, the parents let his neighbor drink. So Jason was hanging out with his neighbor, and then his neighbor said, "Oh, here, drink some beer with me," and teased him. So Jason felt like, for this, because he was just cut from the team, he felt like he couldn't lose his one friend that he felt like he had left. So he started drinking beer with his friend when he was like 16 years old, and he developed a massive alcohol problem, all because of social pressure, because he was teased as a kid and he didn't make the baseball team, and he was afraid to lose one friend who said, "You're cool if you drink beer with me," and that totally destroyed his life. So social pressure is huge. All right, so there's a couple things people can do to avoid addictions. So if you need help, get help. We all have challenges in our life. We all have things that we think about, that we feel about. There's always times when we need somebody else's help. Society tells us, that's a normal need within society, and God tells us that we're not meant to be alone, that we need other people in our lives to carry our burdens. And if we need help, then we should first and foremost talk to our parents. If we can't do that, is there an aunt or an uncle or some other, a pastor or a person in their life that they can trust? Is there a school counselor or a teacher, somebody that you can go to and talk with and ask for help? Because it's incredibly important. So often when people aren't getting that help, that's when they start falling through the cracks of other areas in society.
Right.
So keep going. Next question.
That pretty much wraps up my questions.
Okay.
So,
The anything I can clarify, because sometimes when we're talking about this, it cannot be linear and just answering one question at a time. It can be fairly circular on how one thing affects another.
so really it's just reducing the causes of homelessness and helping individuals with those problems to work through those problems in order to try to minimize homelessness.
Yeah. So if in preventing homelessness in a person's life, what we really have to do is say this: what are the risk factors and what's going on in that individual person's life that we can help with? And it's an individual element. And for every individual, it's going to be a little bit different. So do they need help in tutoring a specific subject in school? Maybe. Do they need help economically in some way so their family or themselves are not as economically challenged? Do they need just straight friendship so they don't feel like they're alone or abandoned or that nobody likes them? Do they need to redefine perhaps a lie they're believing in their life, I'm bad, I'm no good, I'll never succeed, with the truth is they're a valuable human being, they can succeed, there is hope. Frequently it takes hard work to achieve that, and it's good to work hard to achieve that. So sometimes it's directly addressing a belief in their life that may be incorrect, and doing that to prevent homelessness on an individual person by person level. In addressing homelessness, the simple answer is what is going on in each individual's life that caused homelessness, and then what can we do for that one individual to end homelessness in their life. And we do that individually, each person one at a time, because what is causing each individual person to become homeless is different, and so it needs to be tailored person by person to prevent and also to eliminate.
So how can an individual help?
Yeah, an individual can help by doing what they can do. Okay, so it is. I would encourage everybody to say, "What can I do about it?" within the abilities and resources that they possess. So one of the things you can do about this, Sean, is you can do this school project to teach other kids in your school. The other thing you can do is say, okay, what can I do? What am I good at? And is there, to prevent homelessness, is there somebody in my school that I can help who's not good at what I'm good at? And then do homework with them. And you help them, like if you're good in math, then somebody in your class who's not good in math, can you tutor them and help them in math? You can do that. If everybody's doing what we can do, some people can say, hey, I've been blessed financially. I have a really good job and make a nice income. I can support a homeless service agency at $100, $200, $300, $500 a month. And then somebody else says, well, I'm struggling and I don't make as much as this other person, but I want to help the homeless. I can donate $10 a month. If we add all those individual donations together, it's going to meet the need. And if somebody says, hey, I can't even spare $10, but what I can do is I can volunteer my time, and I can come down and say, hey, I want to help with this project, and I want to help serve a meal or cook a meal, then they can do that. Other people may say, well, I'm really, really busy. I can't financially afford to do it, and I can't come down and serve at the mission, at the rescue mission. But what I can do is I can organize a food drive or a clothing drive at my place of business or at my church. So if we're all answering that question, what can I do? And then on an individual basis, and we're looking at our personal giftings, the resources we possess, the talents we possess, and say, how can I use those to help other people? then and then do that, then the need's going to be met. Because Sean, you're going to do one thing, another student in your class is going to do another thing, a businessman is going to do something else, and all of the needs are going to be met by us. The needs going to be met by us individually doing what we can do.
Right.